I don't know, 15, 16, I guess. I was out there fishing. I heard a stick snap, you know, the typical story that you hear. I went up and this thing was walking away from me.
I started seeing this stuff and it just didn't really make sense, and I wasn't into accepting it. I take it into account.
5 voices, 5 encounters, 5 moments where the ordinary world cracked open and something enormous stepped through. A boy in New England saw a drifter that wasn't human. A man on Chestnut Ridge was attacked by rocks and eerie screams. A woman fled the woods from a towering figure with unforgettable teeth. Together, these cases paint a chilling picture. When Bigfoot gets too close, it doesn't just leave footprints, it leaves scars. Flat Squatch Productions. Location: Western Pennsylvania. The secrets of Chestnut Ridge, rocks, howls, and the Bone Cave. In western Pennsylvania, along the rugged backbone of the Chestnut Ridge, the woods hold more than deer trails and hidden hollows. For decades, locals have whispered of strange lights, bone-chilling screams, and creatures that defy explanation. Few know this better than Dwayne, a man who has dedicated years to walking those ridges and listening to the night. His encounters read like a diary of the uncanny. The first encounter came in 2016 in Fayette County. Broad daylight, around 3:30 p.m. Dwayne was tracking signs along a fern-covered trail, documenting a massive 14-inch footprint, when something unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, a rock the size of a man's head flew past him, slamming into a nearby tree. Then came a scream, high, piercing, and powerful enough to shake the air itself. "Like a woman screaming through concert speakers," he said. The sound rattled his chest. Instinct told him to run, but instead he charged uphill, hoping to see what made it. When he reached the ridge, the forest had gone dead silent. No movement, no wind, just the fading echo of that impossible scream.
So I thought I'd go back up there and see if any new activity might have been along that trail. So I'm walking and I go to where that track's at, which had been, you know, the rain had obscured it. It was gone. So I kept walking on down. I went from here to about where that bush is right there. And I'm in ferns that are up to here. And as I get about there, there was an opening area that was devoid of any ferns. And right there was an equal 14x7 track.
This wasn't an isolated case. 4 years earlier, in 2012, just 5 miles from that same spot, Dwayne and 2 others were called to a family farm plagued by strange disturbances. Rocks were thrown near the father, dogs refused to go outside, and livestock acted terrified for weeks. That night, the team set up recorders by the property's fishing pond. For a while, everything was still, until a deep, guttural roar erupted from the ridge. It wasn't a coyote or a bear. The sound carried intelligence and anger. "It froze us in place," Dwayne recalls. The frequency they later analyzed was unlike any known animal. Even more unsettling, when one of the men mimicked the noise, the creature answered back, closer each time before retreating into the dark. But that night brought more than sound. Hovering above the high-tension power lines was a fiery orange orb, glowing silently, about 3 feet across. It glided along the lines, vanished into the trees, then reappeared minutes later before fading beyond the ridge. To Dwayne, it was no illusion. It was as real as the ground under my feet, he insists.
Up until this thing let out this bellowing, deep guttural bellowing growl, roar, and it just did what the scream did. It echoed across his farm up on the ridge. We couldn't really tell exactly where it was coming from at first. And I'll send you the recording, because we luckily got some good recorded, and we run it through a audio spectrum analyzer, and we're able to.
Perhaps the most unsettling encounter came in March 2011, when Dwayne and his girlfriend discovered what locals later called the Bone Cave. At first, it looked like a shadow beneath a rock ledge, but inside lay scattered bones. Deer, porcupines, foxes, even skulls arranged neatly on shelves of stone. Over the next 2 years, Dwayne's team found at least 4 deer carcasses dragged inside and stripped to bone. Whatever lived there wasn't passing through. It was feeding, storing, maybe even nesting. It felt like stepping into a horror film, he recalls, but it was real. Despite game cameras and repeated visits, they never caught what used the cave. Only the chilling evidence remained: piles of bones, stacked skulls, and the feeling of unseen eyes watching from the dark.
We walked closer and I said, no, that's an actual cave. I said, it's an opening. There's something, we can go in it if it's possible. So we both carefully walked over to this opening, and sure enough, this opening was easily this high and this big. You could walk almost through it, just barely, like crouching down, you could walk through it. Well, the thing was, when you went through it, it dropped down, and then there was a rock precipice that went down about 20 feet, and you could see what looked like another cave opening.
Dwayne's stories of Chestnut Ridge weave together like threads in a larger mystery. Rocks hurled with impossible force, screams that split the air, roars recorded and analyzed but never explained, lights hovering above the treetops, and a cave that seemed to serve as both larder and lair for something far beyond a bear or cougar. For those who live in the shadow of the ridge, these aren't tales for campfires. They're warnings, whispered from one generation to the next.
Me and an ex-girlfriend were up there. I took her up because she had a fascination with Bigfoot. I wanted to show her the area that we had this activity happen. And while we were in the woods walking around like we're doing today, there's an outcrop rock mound formation, a big gathering of rocks in all kind of places, clusters of rocks, because it's a lot of sandstone rock and limestone rock formations in this area.
Because out here, when the sun dips and the ridges grow dark, you never truly know what's watching from the tree line. And if you're unlucky, or perhaps chosen, you might hear it scream. Footage courtesy Travel Channel. In the quiet hillsides of Bigfoot country, the Expedition Bigfoot team followed up on countless leads and whispered stories, but one account stood out above the rest. It came from a local woman named Jenny, someone who had lived her whole life in these woods. She carried memories that still made her voice tremble, memories of something she swore was real. Researcher Bryce Johnson traveled out to meet her, hoping her story might shine light on what so many people in the region had been experiencing. Jenny had been hesitant to share her tale over the phone. It was too personal, too haunting. But when Bryce sat across from her at a small wooden table, she finally opened up.
And she came across footprints just last year, and she managed to take some photos of them, but she was a little hesitant to talk about over the phone. So I'm gonna go talk with her, see what she has to say, and hey, Jenny.
Hey, you want to take a seat?
Yeah, I would love to. Let's chat. So Jenny, you told me you experienced some strange things in this area. Would you be willing to tell me a little bit about that?
Jenny explained that her first encounter happened when she was just a child, out hiking near the mountain with her best friend and her friend's sisters. It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon walk, but deep in the woods, the ordinary gave way to something that would mark her forever. She remembered turning her head and seeing fear flash across her friend's sister's face. The girl was staring at something black, massive, and standing upright just beyond a tree line. Jenny described it as no bear. Its height, its sheer presence, was something different. Towering at least 7 feet tall, its body loomed in the shadows, and then it moved. The thing turned its head toward the children, opened its mouth wide, and revealed a set of enormous teeth. That was the moment instinct took over. Jenny and her friends sprinted out of the woods, branches snapping under their feet as the sound of the creature thundered behind them. "It chased us out of the mountain," she said. "We didn't stop running until we were inside the house."
I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. I look over and her sister has this look on her face, just frozen with fear as that thing came after us.
So it chased you?
It chased us out of the mountain, and we didn't stop until we were inside the house.
What about the face? You said you could see
I could see
teeth?
teeth, but that was it. There was a silhouette, and it was dark and blackish. I don't even like to really talk about it because the terror that we felt that day, it stuck with us.
Even after decades, her eyes still filled with emotion as she recalled the terror. She admitted she still struggled to talk about it. What she saw that day wasn't a blur. It was solid, dark, and alive. "The teeth on that thing," she whispered. "I'll never forget them." When Bryce asked what she believed it was, Jenny didn't hesitate. "I think it's a type of ape," she said firmly. For her, it wasn't myth or legend, it was flesh and blood. But her encounters didn't end in childhood. Just last year, while hiking local trails with her boyfriend, she found something that stopped her cold. A massive footprint, far too long and wide to belong to any human. She placed her foot beside it and laughed nervously at the difference. "This isn't human," she said. "This is an animal." Then she saw something stranger still. Inside the print, a smaller footprint, pressed perfectly within it. Bryce immediately recognized what that could mean. He'd heard similar reports before, evidence of Bigfoot family groups. Like a fawn stepping in its mother's tracks, could a young creature have been following its parent? The thought left Jenny trembling. If true, it meant not just one of these beings roamed the woods, but generations. Mountains, but entire family units.
Side of that footprint.
A smaller footprint inside one of the bigger ones.
And if you look really close right through here, maybe there was something stepping in the side of the tracks.
Yeah.
You ever notice deer, the fawns stay really close to mom. And I was like, could this be baby that are following their mother?
I think we often misinterpret that there's only one of these creatures in the woods, but you know, a lot of the times people report them as family units.
For Jenny, that revelation tied everything together. The chase she endured as a child, the enormous prints she saw as an adult, it all pointed to something more than coincidence. She believed there was a hidden population thriving in the undeveloped land around her. Her testimony echoed what many locals whispered but feared to say out loud, that in the caves, ridges, and endless forests of Bigfoot country, creatures still walked that science refused to acknowledge. Jenny ended her story with a quiet certainty. "You can doubt me," she said, "but I know what I saw. And once you see it, you never forget."
Is it possible we're tracking a family unit out there?
It makes you wonder. With all the caves and outcroppings, who knows what's in here? You really have to wonder if, with all this land that's undeveloped, there could be species of ape around here easily that...
For the Expedition Bigfoot team, her account was not only compelling, it was chilling evidence that the legends might not be legends at all. Somewhere out there, beyond the ridges and into the dark woods, something enormous and intelligent still leaves its mark. And for those who've lived in these places their whole lives, Jenny's words ring true. When Bigfoot comes close, you don't just hear a story, you live it. Footage. Courtesy, a flash. Of beauty, Bigfoot revealed. This is the story of Tara Harris, a mother, a psychic, and a woman who never set out to find Bigfoot. She believed in spirits, she had spoken with them, helped them cross over, and assisted grieving families. Ghosts were part of her reality. But Bigfoot? That was something she had never considered, until one day in the mountains, when her world expanded in ways she couldn't have imagined. Tara grew up in the woods, surrounded by nature. Her grandfather, a logger, spent much of his life in the forests. After his passing, she claimed his spirit guided her, urging her to continue spiritual work in a sacred spot in the mountains. According to Tara, this wasn't just any place. It was one of a few rare sites in the world where negative energy couldn't interfere with the work of clearing spirits. It was there, during a routine visit, that she came face to face with something she could never forget.
But when Grandpa passed away, he told us to come up and go to the mountains and do, there's a sacred spot up here that we can work, and it's different than any other spot. There's several of them in the world, but you have to have that one spot. It keeps the bad energy out so you can focus on the good energy. So he basically just told us which way.
She and a friend were in the middle of a clearing when they heard a noise. Turning, they froze. Just 20 feet away stood a massive figure, hairy, towering, and silent. It was Bigfoot. For a moment, fear gripped them. Neither had expected to see anything like this. But the creature did not charge, did not throw rocks, did not growl. It only stood there, watching. Then, in an instant, it vanished, slipping away so quietly, it was as if it dissolved into the forest itself. That first sighting changed everything. From then on, Tara returned to the spot weekly. Soon, strange phenomena began. Knocking sounds echoed around them, circling faster than any human could move. At first, she thought it was Bigfoot, but through her spiritual connection, she claimed she learned otherwise. The knocking, she said, came from another being, one that shared Bigfoot's ability to slip between dimensions, often creating distractions while Bigfoot himself moved unseen.
Up here just doing a regular thing when we saw Bigfoot. We were up here doing a clearing one day, and we heard a noise, and we looked over, and it wasn't like 20 feet away, and he was standing there. And he's just standing there staring at us, and it scared us because we didn't know there were any here, and we'd never seen one or never even thought they existed, whether they did or they didn't. So it was kind of scary at first, but then we realized that he's just looking at us. He isn't being aggressive. He's not throwing things at us or anything. So we kind of looked at him, then we talked about it. So we looked at each other and we looked back, he was gone. Didn't make a noise, nothing.
In the weeks that followed, Tara began to see more. Not just one figure, but a family. A towering male, a female, a smaller adolescent, and even a child. They appeared sometimes in the woods, other times only in her mind's eye. Through what she described as telepathic contact, she said she learned their true name, Aolon, spelled A-Y-L-Y-N. To them, the term Bigfoot was offensive, a crude label. They were not monsters, but beings with intelligence, families, and even culture. According to Tara, Aolon showed her glimpses of their world. She described their dimension as similar to ours, but subtly different. Trees of unfamiliar shapes, great crystal pillars that hummed with energy, and landscapes that felt both alien and familiar. One day, she even claimed the male left her a physical gift, a stone shaped like a footprint, unlike anything she had seen before.
And so we've seen, he actually left a piece of that for me, and in the shape of his foot, actually, which is kind of cool. And I had brought my daughters up one time, and she didn't know anything about it. We hadn't talked about them with her, and she saw them too. And she gave the exact description. The little kid, the medium one, and the female and the male. And she saw them up in the trees behind where we had seen them.
Her daughter, unaware of her mother's experiences, later reported seeing the same figures, describing the child, the female, and the tall male in exact detail. That confirmation cemented Tara's conviction. She wasn't imagining this. In her accounts, Aolon told her of their history with humans. Long ago, they lived openly alongside Native Americans, exchanging energy through touch, communicating without words. But now, they fear humans. They were hunted, distrusted, and forced into secrecy. Only those with a certain energy, a light that Tara believed they could sense, were chosen for contact.
What they've told me is that there are others, and they're like people. They tried to explain it. They showed me in a way like with people, there's bad ones and there's good ones. It's the same for them. There's bad ones. They come from the same place, but there are bad ones and there are good ones. Most are good. They tried to make it clear that they're not out there to hurt anybody, but there are some that are violent. So they tried to show that there are violent people. There are also violent Bigfoot, just like there are good ones.
For Tara, the encounters were life-changing. She said the Aolon cared for the forests, mourned the damage caused by humans, and feared the fires that destroyed their food sources. They were not from this planet, she believed, but had always been tied to it, guardians in the shadows. They don't want to hurt us, she explained. Most of them just want to live. But like people, some are good, and some are not. The lesson Tara took was simple but profound. These beings reveal themselves only to those with respect. If you go into the forest seeking to exploit them, you'll never see them. But if you go in peace, you might just discover that the mystery of Bigfoot is far stranger and far deeper than anyone ever imagined. Footage, courtesy, Penford Media. In the forests of New England, legends run as deep as the roots of the old pines. But every now and then, those legends step out of the shadows and into the lives of ordinary people. That's the spirit behind Within the Woods, a 2024 Bigfoot film produced by Penford Media in association with the New Hampshire Bigfoot Society. No Hollywood monsters, no gimmicks, just raw voices telling what they've seen and what they can't forget. One of those voices is Kelly Porter. His story doesn't begin in adulthood or with fancy equipment. It begins when he was 12, just a kid playing around Lucas Pond in Northwood. "I saw what I thought was some weird guy walking in the woods," he recalls. His father brushed it off as just a drifter.
Having a good time, looking around, you know, as kids do.
Yep.
And I saw what I thought was some weird guy walking through the woods. As my father called him, some old dirty hippie. So I brushed it off as that.
Years later, Kelly saw Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of and realized the weird guy might have been something else entirely. That memory stayed with him.
And then a couple years goes by, and there was a show back in my day. It was called In Search Of. That was my first time that I saw that, and I'm like, it kind of light dawned to Marblehead because I had now put a name to what I had seen.
Yeah.
And when I told my father that that's what I saw, because, you know, my old man, being my old man, was, you know, shut up, you didn't see that. You're goddamn fool. It was probably just somebody running around trying to scare you.
By his mid-teens, while fishing near the Stingy River, he heard a stick snap behind him. Climbing the bank, he saw a figure striding away. Huge, hairy, and human-like, but far too big. 7 feet tall, maybe more, broad enough to look like it could drag a car.
I don't know, 15, 16, I guess. I was out there fishing. I heard a stick snap, you know, the typical story that you hear. I went up, and this thing was walking away from me because it was kind of a muddy banking and stuff. So by the time I climbed myself up there, it had been walking away, and it looked like a big, hairy, naked person. You know what I mean? That's all the only way I can describe it.
It covered ground I couldn't, even at a run, he admits. The thing bolted, leaving Kelly stunned. That was his turning point. After that, I needed to know. I wanted answers.
When it finally realized that I had come up over the bank, and because, I mean, it beat feet and it covered ground that I couldn't cover, let alone, you know, on a dead run. But that was my big intro to it, was when I seen it in Lucas Pond area, and then I saw it again. It was out of control after that for me, because I needed to know. I wanted answers. I wanted to know where, what, when, why, what.
Kelly's not the only one. Doug McCullough, a veteran investigator, has spent 2 decades chasing these reports. He hasn't had a clear sighting himself, but what he's experienced is enough to convince him. Twice, he's heard vocalizations so unnatural he can't attribute them to any animal he knows. Twice, small trees have snapped and slammed to the ground near him. Not toppled, snapped, slammed, he stresses. When that happens 50 yards from you, it's time to go. Doug often repeats an idea passed down through Native American traditions, that Bigfoot shows itself only when it chooses.
A lot of the Native Americans say if you were seen one, you were more than lucky because it decided to let you see it. If it didn't want to be seen, it ain't going to be walking out in the road. When you got all these dark woods and you see a car coming, wouldn't you just step back behind the tree? But they seem to walk out and just take a look at the car coming and almost letting it be seen.
Yeah.
If it doesn't want to be seen, he explains, it won't be. These forests are dark. It can step behind a tree and vanish. That thought alone, that something could be there, watching, choosing whether or not to step forward, keeps his curiosity alive.
I haven't seen it, but I've had 2 really good vocalizations, and I've had 2 cases where a small tree got snapped and slammed to the ground. I have nothing to prove or show for it, but I know what it was, you know? Yeah. Like, I want to see, I'm curious and all this, but when you get something like that at 50 yards maybe, a tree slamming off, time to go for me. I'm pretty convinced.
But perhaps the most relatable testimony comes from Richie B., a man who never went looking for any of this. He bought 3 acres in Massachusetts' Bridgewater Triangle back in 2002, a quiet spot near conservation land. For years, nothing unusual.
Didn't go out looking for anything.
Right.
I own 3 acres in what's called the Bridgewater Triangle in Massachusetts, and it abuts 94 acres of conservation. About a mile out is what's called the Taunton River.
Yep.
And I own the property since 2002.
Then, in 2008, strange cracks and heavy footsteps began echoing through the woods. At first, it was distant. Then it came closer, onto his land, near his home.
And I'd say about 2008 or so, I started noticing different noises, sounds from the woods. So I started hearing walking around and breaks and stuff. I didn't think much of it. I found myself at night, like on the couch, going, what was that sound? You know what I mean? Like, what was out there breaking stuff? And it went on, this went on for months, like 6 months. And then I started noticing events happening at my house closer to me.
One afternoon, while raking by his fire pit, he heard an elm snap and watched it fall right on his property.
Okay.
One particular time I was out in the yard raking around this fire pit I have, cleaning up all the loose wood and stuff. And I heard something walk, and I didn't look yet. I was raking, and I heard about I'd say about 8 to 10 inch elm or oak snap in one pull. It went, and I turned like this, and I just saw it coming down.
The woods were dense, but something was in there. I froze, Richie recalls. I grabbed my phone and recorded. You can hear it on my channel, a guttural growl. What struck him most was the absurdity mixed with fear. He tried to sound brave, saying, "You stay there, I'll stay here."
And it was, in my property, you have to understand, I have a game trail. It's all dense woods. It opens up into a clearing and then goes back to dense woods and wetlands, right? So I just froze. So I grabbed my phone, I held my phone up, and I said, and I held my phone up, and you can hear it on my YouTube channel. The thing goes, and at first I was brave, right? You get that man thing, and I'm like, this is your property, this is my, yeah, Richie B.
He laughs about it now. Then it hit me. What am I doing? I just heard a growl from something I can't see. Instinct took over. He slowly backed away toward the street. That moment changed everything.
And then it hits me, the fight or flight human thing hits me. What am I doing? I just heard a guttural sound with a creature I can't see. So I have about an acre of grass fenced in, so I started backing up to the street where I felt safer.
Already a paranormal investigator, Richie began documenting strange tree structures.
I'm a structures guy. There's nothing scientific about it, actually. Technically, right?
Arches, twists, deliberate formations, and sharing them with rangers and guides.
I won't talk to you about structures. Zero chance. It ain't happening. And Crystal as well. She's a little open-minded to it. Dave McCullough from Squatchachusetts is open to it. Mike Trainer, you just saw walk by. The Vogels even, I'll talk to them. They have a lot of great explanations for things. And they're outdoor wilderness guides. So they're out in the woods all the time. Tim Vogel lives on 1,300 acres and is a forest ranger.
We'll have to get him over here.
Oh, you must speak to them.
Some shrugged. Others couldn't explain it. That's enough for me, he says. I'm not chasing clicks. I'm chasing the truth.
And I've sent them pictures of stuff that they can't explain. So I don't just try to make things up and say, hey, look at me, click and view. That ain't what I'm doing. What I'm doing is sending it out to other people that have more knowledge than I do.
Absolutely.
Like you should, like a DNA or anything else, right? You send it out to those guys, they've seen everything. Tim Vogel lives on 1,300 acres and is a forest ranger.
We'll have to get him over here.
Oh, you must speak to them.
What makes Within the Woods compelling isn't effects or drama. It's the raw honesty of people like Kelly, Doug, and Richie. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, until something in the dark made them question everything. And here's the truth older folks know well. Sometimes, life doesn't give you tidy answers. You hear the branch snap, you see the figure vanish, you feel the ground shake as something heavy moves in the dark. You don't get to wrap it up neat and simple. You just live with it. As Doug McCullough says, I have nothing to prove. But I know what I felt, Kelly Porter nods. Richie B shrugs with a half smile. Different men, different encounters, but all pointing to the same unsettling possibility, that something boom intelligent and elusive shares these woods with us. And maybe that's the reason people keep coming back to stories like these. Not for monsters or myths, but for voices that sound like neighbors, reminding us that the forest isn't as empty as we'd like to think. Footage courtesy Greg Brotherton. Location Harstein Island near Shelton, Washington. For 5 long years, Rich Germo searched the forests of Washington, chasing the mystery of Bigfoot. He wasn't a casual enthusiast. He worked with respected groups like the Olympic Project and the Sasquatch Genome Project, devoting countless hours to placing cameras, setting up traps, and following up on local reports. But everything changed on November 11, 2010, when he had the encounter that ended his search for good.
all this stuff, and they only take into account legitimate stuff that's within their acceptable belief system, I guess. And they tend to throw everything else out the back door and not consider it. But unfortunately, you know, about 60% of the evidence is all that stuff they want to throw away. You know, and I started seeing this stuff, and it just didn't really make sense, and I wasn't into accepting it. I take it into account because I was talking to people that I really trusted after.
Harstein Island, where the event took place, had always been rich with sightings. Over a decade, multiple witnesses had reported tall, hairy figures crossing the roads at night, sometimes more than one at a time. Rich trusted the history of the location, and he set up 5 cameras in a narrow corridor where sightings kept happening. It seemed like the perfect place to catch evidence. That day started like any other. Rich was collecting campaign signs from his failed run for sheriff and decided to swing by the island to check on his cameras. He wasn't carrying his gun this time, which was unusual for him. From the moment he arrived, though, a strange unease set in. He couldn't explain it, only that something felt wrong. The woods were unnaturally quiet. No birds, no wind, nothing. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath. When he checked his first camera, he noticed a faint impression in the needles, the shape of a large foot. Excited, he bent down to inspect it, but the feeling of dread only grew stronger. Moving on to his second camera, the sensation became overwhelming. He described it as if the whole world was closing in around him, a heaviness pressing on his chest. It wasn't ordinary fear. It felt like something was projecting the emotion onto him.
Within their acceptable belief system, I guess. And they tend to throw everything else out the back door and not consider it. But unfortunately, you know, about 60% of the evidence is all that stuff they want to throw away. You know, and I started seeing this stuff, and it just didn't really make sense, and I wasn't into accepting it. I take it into account because I was talking to people that I really trusted after a period of time and forming a relationship over with them, and they were stuck on these stories of this weird stuff. And
as he fumbled with his keys, trying to open the camera box, he heard faint twig snaps to the northwest. At first, he thought it might be a deer. It was rut season after all, and he even heard what sounded like a buck snort, but nothing appeared. The noises continued, steady and deliberate, almost as though something was intentionally distracting him. Then came the moment that would end his search forever. From just 20 yards ahead came a deep, guttural groan that rolled through the trees. It wasn't any animal Rich knew. It sounded frustrated, almost angry. Slowly, he lifted his head. Beside an alder tree stood a massive, dark figure, its body matted with tangled hair and debris. The sight froze him. It was huge, like a Volkswagen standing upright on 2 legs. The creature knew it had been seen. In one fluid, unnatural motion, it ducked and glided across the clearing. Even crouched, it towered over him. Despite its bulk, it made no sound, no snapping branches, no heavy footsteps, just silence and speed. Within seconds, it vanished. Rich's gut turned cold. If it wanted him, he wouldn't make it. He was sure there were 2 of them, one creating noise to distract him while the other closed in. He thought about running, but knew it wouldn't matter. If it came after him, he'd never reach the road. For a moment, he was certain he was about to die. The encounter didn't stay in the woods.
The new reports. I had 5 cameras in this one little tight area. It was a really small area where they were crossing in this, basically an alleyway between 2 roads, and there were people living on these 2 sides, and this area stretched for about 1.5 miles down to a beach. One day, it was November 11th, 2010, and I had ran for sheriff that year, and I had lost the election, and I think that was the day you were...
For 2 months afterward, Rich woke every night at exactly 3 a.m. The moment his eyes snapped open, a powerful thought pressed into his mind. Stop looking for them. It wasn't a voice, but a command, a warning. Then, one evening, stepping out of his car near his home, a piercing Bigfoot scream shattered the night. It came from just 20 feet away. He lived in a residential neighborhood, but the sound was unmistakable, high-pitched, angry, and deliberate. To Rich, the message was clear. We know where you live.
And it moved so fast, it was frightening in its speed, and it was silent. There wasn't a noise when it moved. And we didn't find any tracks here. I came back the next day, and nothing. in this spot. No approach, no leave. I mean, nothing. But then we went and looked over there, which is where I heard all the noise coming from the whole time, like, which I assumed was a diversion later. Like there was two, and one was diverting my attention while one was...
That was the end of his search. Rich came to believe he had been zapped, a term researchers use for infrasound, low-frequency vibrations that can induce fear, confusion, or illness. It explained the dread he felt before even seeing the creature, and why his body reacted as if danger was already certain. Today, he still feels a strange guilt when he thinks of going back into the woods, as though crossing that line would bring consequences. His encounter didn't just scare him, it changed him. "I know what I saw," he later admitted. "I know what I felt. And I know I was told, in no uncertain terms, to stop." For Rich Germo, the hunt for Bigfoot ended not with proof, but with a warning.
Footage courtesy: Wild Man of the Woods. In the quiet back roads of Grimes County, Texas, lies the Twin Rivers Wolf and Wolf Dog Sanctuary. Run by Catherine Howell and supported by veteran Bigfoot investigator Jerry Mills, this refuge was built for rescued animals. Yet in recent years, it has become the center of a mystery that neither of them expected to face. Catherine often walks the grounds at night to check on the 46 wolf dogs. One spring, heavy floods left the soil thick with mud. While feeding the dogs one evening, she heard a scream so loud it shook the air. It echoed like a movie monster, sending every animal on the property into silence. Even the hungriest dogs froze and stared into the trees.
And I heard something scream so loud that it like echoed and literally vibrated the air. And to me, it sounded demonic, but it kind of sounded like King Kong in the movie. And the dogs just instantly all stopped moving. They get really excited, when it's time to get food, to be fed, and they all stopped and just stared back into the woods.
Over time, stranger things appeared. Decorative discs on the dog enclosures began disappearing. No one would dare step inside with so many wolf dogs, yet one by one, the discs were pulled loose and taken into the woods. Catherine and a volunteer named Amber then started finding massive footprints, 3-toed tracks with claws sunk deep into the wet ground. She sent photos to Jerry Mills, who had documented Sasquatch sightings across the South. His response was blunt: "That's Bigfoot territory." Soon, the evidence piled up. A resident volunteer reported her camper shaking at night. At first, she blamed horses roaming nearby, but rain left perfect prints at dawn. Long, tapered tracks, unlike anything she had seen. Hair samples with a coarse orange-tan color were later discovered, caught under the fifth wheel edge of the trailer. Jerry recognized the shape of the tracks from other regions: Falk, Arkansas, the setting of the legend of Boggy Creek, and Louisiana's Honey Island swamp monster. The same style of foot, the same long claws.
And their feet are shaped different. And these tracks match exactly the same ones out of Falk, Arkansas. And the movie that had the legend of Boggy Creek, what's the Boggy Creek monster, and the other track that was just exactly the same was picked up in Honey Island Swamp. They call it the Honey Island Swamp monster. And these guys had feet like that. So, a Squatch is a Squatch regardless of what his feet, so.
Then came the voices. Catherine and Amber stood outside one night when they heard 2 calls echoing back and forth from opposite ends of the woods. A week earlier, Catherine had heard what sounded like an animal being killed. Low waves of sound that vibrated through the trees. As the calls rose, the wolf dogs began a low, mournful howl, as if answering whatever was out there. Heavy cinder blocks Catherine had set at a gate to block a dog's escape were later moved aside overnight. More prints appeared, always in places no person should have been. Yet for all the strangeness, the woods never felt openly hostile. Catherine says she has lived there for years and never felt afraid. She simply wishes she could see what leaves the tracks. For Jerry and Catherine, the sanctuary has become more than a refuge. It is now a front row seat to something unknown moving through the Texas night, a story still being written in footprints, howls, and hair left behind.
Deep in the swampy heart of southeast Texas, where alligators slink and pines tower over murky creeks, legends of Bigfoot thrive. Jerry the Wolfman Mills, a lifelong hunter, knows these bottomlands like his own shadow. From eerie wood knocks to a giant handprint on his truck, his chilling encounters paint a picture of Sasquatch, not as myth, but as a living, breathing force pacing the thickets. Step into the humid dark, where silence screams louder than howls, and something massive watches. We listen to his experience as shared by Wildman of the Woods. Jerry's first brush came hunting with a friend.
And all of a sudden I heard another one, and all of a sudden there was 3 different directions. And he was adamant, that's what, I said, well, I'll be dang, man. So he made one whoop at him and one whoop back. And I said, you are kidding me. Whatever. And we just went on about our business, but, you know, that's in the back of your mind then, you know. A few days go past, we go back out there to go hunting, and we separate, and I'm walking down a wide open levee top.
Wood knocks echoed from 3 directions, answered by a whoop that froze him. Days later, alone on a levee, he spotted fresh egret feathers floating, a bird freshly killed, its neck torn. Something paced him in the trees, matching his steps, stopping when he did. Gun raised, he shouted, but the shadow vanished. His buddy, 300 feet away, faced the same stalker. They found a muddy 12-inch footprint, water still pooling, too big for any man. Jerry knew then this was no bear.
And sure enough, we went back there and I looked, and there was a footprint about that big and about that wide that I could put my number 12 Red Wing boot down into and not touch the sides, still had water running into it. Every other puddle around there was clear except that one. And that's where it had stepped and crossed over. And I realized then, oh my God, something was really out there.
Years later, in a deer blind, Jerry's eyes kept drifting to a tree line 150 yards out. Against habit, he scoped it. Nothing. Twice more, nothing. Then, a small figure, arms pumping, legs blurring like a roadrunner, bolted across, chasing prey. At dusk, a scream, no owl, ripped from a clear cut. Then, an 8-foot giant, maybe 700 pounds, strode across the road, its toes digging into a rise like it floated. Days later, a massive handprint smudged his truck's dusty window, fingers splayed, testing the glass. Venturing deeper with night vision and FLIR, Jerry's team heard the swamp go dead. Crickets hushed, frogs silent. A branch snapped, steps shadowed them, stopping when they did. No thermal trace, but the quiet screamed presence. In a canoe trip to a storm-ravaged bayou, Jerry and a friend hit a hot spot.
Now, me and another friend of mine, he had discovered this really hot spot that nobody goes into. Since the storms and the dead trees, they didn't go in there anyhow. It's almost impenetrable now. But of course, me and my buddy, he knows where it's at. Let's go. So we went, and we had to take a boat to get to it.
Shapes flickered on fell IR, gaps between trees closing and opening. A limb smashed 20 yards off, their boat dragged ashore, paddles tossed. They fled, lights on, pretending calm, but the message was clear. Too close. These swamps, where natives drew hairy giants on cave walls, hold secrets older than settlers. Creeks are Sasquatch highways, but reservoirs threaten this world, drowning deer, turkey, and Bigfoot alike. Jerry, tied to Twin Rivers Wolf Sanctuary, urges saving these lands. As the bayou whispers and something steps through the dark, one question lingers. Will you hear the knock before it's too close? In the rugged wilds of British Columbia's Harrison Hot Springs, where mountains hug misty lakes and gravel roads twist through dense forests, Sasquatch rules the shadows. Known for the most Bigfoot sightings in Canada, this land hums with eerie tales of hairy giants. A hunter's strange howl, a towering figure on railroad tracks, and native stories fuel the chase. Armed with a camera and grit, Angelo is on the hunt for proof, stumbling on moved wood, a massive footprint, and a rock thrown at his car. He shares his journey on his channel, Exploring with Angelo. Is the hairy man of the woods watching? In 1970, a teen working a logging road near Chilliwack.
I said to Harold, sitting next to me, "What are they saying?" He said, "Sasquatch, Sasquatch." He said, "What's that?" So they pointed ahead, and about 500 meters ahead, there was a big thing standing on the railroad tracks. Now, the two railroad tracks are still there, and the ditch is still there too. And in one step, it stepped across the railroad tracks. It didn't jump, it was upright, and it stepped across the ditch, and then it stopped in the middle of the road.
Saw something unforgettable. A massive figure stepped across railroad tracks in one stride, paused on a wide gravel road, and stared back before sprinting off. It didn't jump, it stepped, he recalls, describing an upright beast too big for a bear. The native crew shouted, "Sasquatch!" and fled, their fear sealing the moment's truth. Decades later, at Sasquatch Provincial Park, strange signs pile up. Near Hicks Lake, a heap of sticks looks oddly placed, not like a campsite prep. A dark shape, tall as a tree, flashes behind a trunk, bigger than any bear, upright, gone in a blink. Bears don't walk like that, the hunter mutters, heart racing, finding no trail or reason for anyone to be there.
Possibly a bear, but on its hind legs? No, I don't think that makes sense. Bears don't walk on their hind legs. They go on all fours. Okay. There's no real trail here, so I don't see why anybody would be back here. I don't see anything.
Further up, near Rainbow Falls, a rock smacks the car's passenger side on a barren dirt road.
Have to stop, but then apparently drive in reverse, and I can't even really turn around. Oh, not static. Stupid radio. Whoa. Okay. Looks like it keeps going.
No trees overhead, no dents, just a loud thud. Moments later, a dark figure moves on a cliff face, too tall for a human, too swift for chance. Bigfoot throws rocks, the hunter recalls from viral videos, pulse pounding as he scans the empty ridge.
It looked like something was moving, but there's a lot of trees out there, so it's like by where that rock is, it looked like someone was up there for a second. Who the hell would be up there, though? That's like a crazy cliff face. What if it's possible that, so Bigfoot apparently throws shit at people? There was this nighttime video that I...
Backtracking to a disturbed spot, the evidence mounts. Wood piles, dragged uphill, form a path-like line, unlike any bear's work. A wet, massive footprint twice the size of a man's sits nearby, fresh in the mud. No animal stacks wood like this, he says, camera shaking. The forest falls silent. No birds, no wind, just the weight of something watching. From native carvings to modern tracks, Harrison's forests whisper of Sasquatch. As night falls and musty odors drift, the question isn't if Bigfoot exists, it's how close he's standing right now. That's all, folks, for our hunt on Sasquatch. Did those footprints, videos, and rock throws convince you, or are you still skeptical? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit that like button if you want more Bigfoot adventures. Subscribe, hit the bell, and let's keep chasing the hairy man together. Keep an eye out for the hairy man. In the wild frontiers of Canada and Alaska, where ancient forests hide tribal secrets and ice-crusted lakes boom with wolf howls, Dr. Robert Alli, a lifelong outdoorsman turned anthropologist, bridged myth and reality. From boyhood wanderings in Winnipeg's boulevards to solo weekends at a remote cabin teeming with moose and beavers, Alli's bond with nature ran deep. Native tales of Sasquatch, once dismissed as folklore, developed into urgent truths through plaster casts, eyewitness whispers, and his own midnight confrontations. Over decades, these encounters revealed not just elusive giants, but shapeshifters blurring the veil between worlds. Alli's awakening stirred in the 1970s Manitoba wilds as he shares on A Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed.
Professors at the time would say, this is just myth, legend, and folklore. Others said, no, there are actual tracks, plaster of Paris tracks that Conservation Officer Bob Uchtman at the PAW Manitoba cast. So at Manitoba back in the 70s, it was one government that at the base level, grassroots level, actually started to show evidence.
The conservation officer Bob Taman cast real tracks in plaster, defying professors who branded them cultural artifacts. Ivan Sanderson's Oxford-forged books on global hominids hooked him further, planting seeds of Neanderthal survivors in North America's shadows. By 1973, Alli's internship at a native hospital in Edmonton flooded him with honest patient stories, gifts of gratitude revealing Sasquatch as flesh and blood kin to the Nuatka or Haida people, not mere bedtime warnings. The pivot came in 1975 on Vancouver Island's South Shore during a romantic getaway at Upper Campbell Lake. After 10 rainless days of pristine logging roads, pine cones and pebbles pelted his tent every 5 minutes, trackless pranks he blamed on a local teen. At midnight, flashlight in hand to fend off the intruder, Alli swung the beam 90 degrees.
So there I was on the south shore of Upper Campbell Lake on Vancouver Island, just west of Campbell River. And in my flashlight beam, I shone my light on what I expected to be a high school kid playing pranks that had managed not to leave tracks. For the last 10 days, there'd been no rain, and every little mouse and deer and elk track was showing in that fine dust that you find on logging roads on the east side of Vancouver Island and the Olympics.
There, 7.5 feet tall under a Douglas fir, stood a dark brown hair-covered being, broad-shouldered, ape-like yet eerily human, staring back for 3 heart-stopping seconds. It bolted, shattering trees like Rice Krispies in a 60-decibel frenzy, the din waking his companions. Feigning calm, Alli stoked the fire, claiming an elk or bear, but sleep evaded him. His mind raced through anthropology. Not Neanderthal, not Java man, perhaps Meganthropus erectus, swollen to Sasquatch size across Siberian ice ages, eternally wary of wolves poaching winter kills.
Just from the jaw reconstruction, he did a reconstruction, not full size, of a Meganthropus, Homo erectus paleojavanicus from Java. My thought was, holy smokes, if any of these guys got north, up into Siberia during the last 4 ice ages, they're going to double in size, become Sasquatches, and perpetually hate wolves that are trying to steal their winter live or die.
This theory crystallized. Giants forged in isolation, hybrids haunting coastal tribes like the Kwakiutl or Tlingit, trading venison for blankets before colonial muskets soured the peace. Alli's Alaska years deepened the enigma. Southeast encounters hinted at Kushitka, shapeshifters mimicking otters, or even friends, as a Marine Highways officer witnessed a Sasquatch morph into a 5-foot river otter mid-swim. A Saxman youth saw a white-furred giant dissolve into his buddy's form at a parking lot's edge. Tlingit elders, like the late Nina Petrovich, clarified, Sasquatch are earthbound, but Kushitka? They can be anything. Friendly traders or cannibalistic wraiths vibrating beyond human sight. Tracker Fred Roll logged 350 to 400 Alaskan run-ins, 0 benevolent saves, no cougar-slaying heroes, just rock barrages and window-peering threats. Yet, hybridization lingered. Lighter-skinned coastal Sasquatch, Per Colville and Schwennick tales, walking among humans as stick Indians. Alli's sequenced BC hair sample, analyzed by Melba Ketchum, yielded unknown DNA, closure for 9/11 victims, silenced for Bigfoot by academic gatekeepers.
Melba did great work. She got closure for so many people after 9/11, when her particular short nucleotide polymorphism techniques allowed her to identify remains that would have otherwise been completely lost. And I think there was some reaction from the old guard in speaking to the journal Nature, shut her down, shut this paper down, it doesn't belong.
Infrared repels them. Audio unmasks mimics, owls with bison lungs belting 60 decibels. Government misdirection thrives, from jammed rifles to dismissed suits like Audrey's in California. Alli urged grassroots vigilance. Record voices for Olympic Project Prince evade three-letter scrutiny. As raven prayers rise over totem-carved shores, one question shadows the mist. If Sasquatch walks among us, who or what watches you tonight? In the misty borderlands of Indiana and Kentucky, where the Ohio River moves through the dense forests, a century of terrifying events unfolds. Since the 1880s, wild men and ape-like horrors have stalked these rural hollows, their screams echoing from newspaper clippings to family nightmares. The 1970s brought the Spotsville Monster, a relentless siege on one family's farm that shattered the veil between myth and malice. Over 35 years later, the fear still exists, as we see on Squatch Mafia, as fresh sightings whisper that these shadows never truly left. The saga ignites in 1936, with the Booneville Beast crashing into southwestern Indiana's farms. The Duff family's German Shepherd lay crushed, skull shattered by an unseen force, as screams tore through the summer nights. Towering like a bear yet striding on two legs, the creature left 16-inch footprints, its ape face glimpsed by Ralph Duff before it mauled a police dog in 1937. Armed posses and bear traps failed. By August, the howls faded, but the stench of rot clung to the riverbanks. Decades simmered with UFO waves, like the 1955 Hopkinsville Goblins, before the 1970s unleashed fury. In Pike County, Indiana, the Pike County Monster, a 10-foot black-furred blur hitting 60 miles per hour, stank of cadavers and vanished after a week's rampage. Missouri's 1972 beast hoisted car rears and peered into bedrooms, driving families from homes along the Mississippi. Then, the Hatfield Monster prowled Spencer County, its white fur and skunk smell drawing sheriff's deputies to frantic shootouts. Kentucky's turn came in 1978 with the Fairview Horror, a 10-foot black-haired giant mutilating a 350-pound steer near Owensboro, its 16-inch tracks reeking of foulness. But nothing rivals the Spotsville Siege, erupting in summer 1975.
We had this big dusk to dawn light out there beside the house, and I just happened to look over there, and there was this thing standing right directly under that light. But this had, his face looked kind of like a leather or something, you know? But its hair was long, its arms was long, and it was tall, and it was covered with, it looked like dark brown hair. Of course, it was night, but he was under that light.
The Nunnally family, new to their haunted farmhouse on Mountain Ridge Road, found chickens vanishing and mutilated dogs, 8 in all, dumped on fields, necks twisted, throats drained without a drop spilled. Terror peaked as Red Nunnally spotted an 8-foot hairy sentinel under the dusk to dawn light, its leather-like face and long arms frozen in the glow. "Hurry, get the kids!" he urged, as it loomed, unblinking. Broad daylight sightings followed, 9 to 10-foot figures with graying reddish-brown fur, broad shoulders squared like elders of the wild. Nights brought sieges, doors rattled, windows peered into by glowing red eyes, stones pummeling the roof. Chickens numbered 250 slaughtered, a horse and goat torn apart while vicious dogs cowered under the porch.
Dad started to call the state police to come out and, you know, help us out and maybe escort us off the property, and they would come out with their sirens blaring and their lights flashing, and the creature would just slip back into the woods until they were gone and then come back out. After 5 or 6 calls, the police stopped responding to our calls. They wouldn't come out and help us anymore.
Police dismissed it as bears, sirens scaring it off only to return mocking. Desperate, 4 armed men scaled the roof, unleashing volleys into midnight shadows. Bullets struck flesh, they swore, yet dawn revealed no bodies, only intensified fury. By April 1976, the Nunnallys fled, the farmhouse razed. Echoes persist. In 2005, a roar scattered wildlife from a ravine, revealing an 8 to 9 foot watcher in an abandoned barn, arm draped on the beam for 30 minutes. Over 400 documented Kentucky sightings fuel the dread, from land between the lakes to the Pope Lick monster. As the Ohio River murmurs ancient warnings, one question chills the fog. What hunts in your quiet countryside tonight? So what do we make of it all? 5 different people, 5 different places, yet every story carries the same shadow, a presence in the woods that defies explanation. Some say it's just an undiscovered primate. Others insist it's something darker, something that chooses when and how to be seen. But one thing is certain, those who've come face to face with it are never the same again. Maybe Bigfoot isn't just hiding from us. Maybe it's deciding who gets to walk away. The question is, would you?